Hey, so yeah, I just had some it was interesting. So last week my IFS was really deep and I feel like I got to something like super deep in my guts, Some toddler part that just felt like nobody ever attuned to her. And finally she's at some kind of peace, she got attuned to. She got to cry as much as she wanted without any judgment. And And my Aubrey Plaza looking part, who was, like, slow clapping about me having my little toddler cry moment, um, she kinda wasn't sure what to do with herself anymore, and so my therapist, my counselor, asked me to ask her what she might wanna do, and I think to everyone's surprise, she wanted to hang out and play with the toddler who's happy now to play by herself or to welcome me or, like, it's just there's no angst there anymore. But there was still a sense of waking up every morning with a sense of dread that honestly pervaded my whole body. And I feel like getting to the toddler part almost kind of unlocked that so that I could actually reach it. And that's what I did today with my counselor. She's not trained as a therapist. She's trained in IFS and she's just brilliantly intuitive and imaginative and kind without blowing smoke up your ass. Um, I wish there were 100 million of her all around the world. It'd be such a good world. But yeah, so that part, it kind of looked like, embarrassment from Inside Out 2, the kind of big kind of marshmallow man with the hoodie over his eyes with just kind of his big nose sticking out and just trying to kind of, trying to hide while sticking out like a sore thumb, which is very familiar to me. Um, I mean, that's kind of how I felt most of my childhood. And and then when that one kind of, he asked for tomka soup and chocolate chip cookies, and at first he just like didn't want to look at me, didn't want to talk to me, just wanted to hide, whatever. And eventually, he seemed like he was ready to take off the hoodie, but he kept hesitating. And then finally, instead of taking it off this way, he sort of reached back and took his whole torso off. And so he all it was left was a sort of skinny, like almost like a drowned cat, like a stretched out drowned cat looking thing, like a Muppet or something, with scraggly, just like, you know, um, I don't know, and kind of crazy googly eyes or something. And it kind of like set back, like, finally done with that goddamn, you know, other way of being. And it was like he was like this kind of like a war veteran almost sitting there eating his soup, like, you know, just orienting and kind of calming down, remembering who he was. And he kind of transformed. I mean, it's funny how something can look the same, but then the vibe can totally change. And so his vibe was more like wise and wily. And I got this distinct sense he was eating soup and then he was gonna go. Like, and that was it. And then the thought of that made another part over on the left side of my chest, nervous. So we checked in with that part, and it was like a kind of, how did I describe it? A frail fairy, like a frail kind of golden yellow fairy, yellow gold fairy, um, that was kind of desperate and not happy. And she looked at me and she's like, "You're 44 and you suck." Like, when I ask, what does she see when she looks at me? You kind of suck. Um, and I was like, okay, I don't think this is real authentic joy here, because it kind of turned out that she was the one who tried to kind of plaster joy and playfulness and spontaneity on top of that embarrassed one, kind of like trying to cover for it, but not doing a very good job, and then kind of blaming me for that. Um, it's kind of like the way that they tell people, oh, you need to do self care when they don't pay them living wages. It's this kind of plastering a smile on top of bullshit, or plastering a smile on top of it. It's just kind of fake. It's not getting underneath to the root of what's actually needed. And so this one apparently didn't believe in, innate spontaneity, joy, playfulness, and thought she had to bring it, and it's exhausting. It's really exhausting. And at the same time, the whole thing feels kind of fake. So, like, it's not even fun. It's like, why is everything so horrible? Um, so long story short, they both kind of were ready to get into the light bubble and go on their way. And when they did, the light bubble kind of pulsed into this sort of glowing lotus flower, and then closed up again and, shot into the light with sort of the trail of, like, a tail trailing it, and then the tail went also, and then it just like, ooh, wow, okay. Um, that's gone. And I felt so weirdly naked, because it felt like the embarrassment part was the part of the ego that thinks I need a buffer between myself and life, that thinks I can't make good decisions. Um, I have no good options. So I just have to remove myself from life as well as I can, like, step back from it. Not in the enlightened way, but in the other way, the dissociating way. Um, so that's the thing, I wake up every morning, maybe tomorrow morning will be different, but I wake up every morning with this thing of like, okay, what am I going to screw up today? And I don't know, really interesting to see how I wake up tomorrow. But it's also been interesting to see just today how my perception has shifted. Um, well, one more thing that was interesting today, the temple of the Way of Light has a community, and there was a talk today about, what's it called? Compassionate communication, something like that. Um, Sort of teaching us how to, say, I feel X when you Y because Z, with no judgment, right? It's not about telling the other person why they're wrong or explaining in detail. Um, I mean, the point is not to go on and try to make them understand every little nuance of this situation. It's just like, I feel X when you Y because Z, period. And then you see what they have to say. And if they're defensive, then you're supposed to say, "Oh, okay, I can hear that you think Q about this. Okay, I get that. I still feel X when you Y because Z. You know, and none of us can do it. None of us can even come close to doing it without judgment and blame, without a lot of coaching. And it just kind of went to show how entrenched it is in us to jump to judgment and blame. of others, and I mean ourselves too, but uh, yeah, it was quite illustrative. So anyway, the yeah, it was like a peek behind the curtain. It's like, wow, you know, it's crazy hard for me to just explain how I feel and give a short explanation and then sort of put the ball in someone else's court without trying to over explain, enumerate, judge, analyze, um, get on top of things somehow and make somebody else wrong. So that really gave me a bit of a jolt, I guess, of goodness, that's there. Um, but yeah, since that plus the IFS breakthroughs, I have it's easier to shift into a perception where it's like there's a sense of stillness and things going on all around it, if that makes sense. Like when I'm driving, it feels less like my car is moving down the road than like the road is moving past me. The road's coming and then moving past me. Um, like I'm in a simulator. That's really what it feels like. Like you're, on the holodeck when you run, 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 and you're actually it's just a kind of um, sophisticated treadmill, basically. And there's also a keener sense that there are no rules. Like any rule you can make, you can find the exception. Um, like even in soccer, like it's just as an example, sometimes you use the tried and true methods that have a higher percentage of working in general, right? And other times you do something totally crazy, like run straight at somebody who, maybe they look nervous or something, and you're going to sort of anticipate that they're going to make a bad pass instead of go right around you, right? Um, that's a dangerous thing to do actually, because that's if it's a really skilled player, they just dribble around you. Uh, but sometimes that's exactly what needs to happen. Or sometimes, I mean, sometimes it turns out that was exactly what needed to happen, right? Other times, they just blow right past you, and they got a free shot at the goal. Um, but you don't know until you do the thing, and then you still don't know because maybe another thing would have been even better. So it's just like, wow, we are out here without a net, without a rope, without a breadcrumb trail, in some senses, in some ultimate senses, I guess. I don't know. It all sounds kind of stupid, simple, even, cliche a little bit. But a cliche is a cliche until you're like, oh, I get it now. That happens over and over. A quotation, you're like, yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay, that's probably true. And you're like, oh shit, that's true. You know. Um, so yeah, in a sense that like if I'm kind of socially awkward around the other soccer players or whatever, okay, I'm socially awkward. Who cares? It happens and then it's over and then something else happens. They kick me off the team. I'm not gonna cry. I'm find another team or find another hobby or whatever. It's just like if they're the kind of people who kick you out for being socially awkward, then okay, that's That's the, situation. That's fine. So, yeah, there's still occasional there'll be, like, a little bit of a fear, like, "Oh, maybe in the next minute, I'm gonna, like, steer my car into another car head on for no reason or something." Um, Because I mean, you don't really know what's gonna happen next, and you don't really have control over it. Uh, and there's a occasional sense of of that intimacy that they talk about, I think. Um, and just like, wow, it's all right here. Wow, it's all this. Wow, it's so luminous and tenuous and solid at the same time, and magnificent and pretty, and it's like, like when I was working with the mushrooms and the bathroom tiles were doing fascinating things, changing every single moment, right? That's what everything does all the time. Things change every single moment. You just like you look around, you just whatever's going on. I mean, what can you say about it? And then before you can say anything, it changes. So yeah, how do you live like this? The words self-validating always kind of bug me because it's like pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. Like, how do you know what's validating what? You know, I mean, how does validation validate itself? But the isness of things and the stillness of being while stuff happens all around you, apparently. I mean, who knows? Maybe it's just one perspective, one way of looking at things. Maybe there's no inherent benefit to this versus being more thought identified. It does feel more free though, but it feels kind of vertiginously free and empty in a way that can be a little bit empty, I guess. And there's other Yeah, I mean, I like, it's just today that it's kinda gotten like this, so, there's no sense expecting everything to be sorted immediately. But yeah, there's a lingering, I guess, doubt that this is it, like, something still feels a bit unfinished. I'm not that worried about it. Maybe there's still some heavy energy in my heart area and some in my gut area too. I should probably do quite a lot of meditation. I've been resisting that, so that probably is exactly what I need to do. Um, but I've been editing a book all week, so it's kind of been eating up my time and energy. Anyway, no sense drawing this out too much. So that's kind of where I'm at. And yeah, here we go.